If anyone had asked me, even just a few months ago, what the most ordinary part of my day was, I would have answered without hesitation. Those quiet, empty hours right before bed. The ones where the world seemed to slow down, where the only sound in my apartment was the soft hum of the fridge and the occasional car passing by outside my window. That night started exactly like that. My work shift had ended late. My dinner had been nothing more than leftover pasta, and I had flopped down onto my worn-out couch with the same intention as always, to mindlessly scroll through TikTok until my brain was numb enough to fall asleep. It was a harmless routine, one I'd perfected over the years. I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. Just another stream of funny cat videos, viral dances I'd never attempt, and strangers offering life advice I'd forget by morning. But then, there was her. I almost scrolled past the video, barely paying attention at first. But something made me pause. My thumb hovered in the air, frozen, while my mind caught up with my eyes. It wasn't just the lighting or the angle, it was her face. A face so familiar, it felt like I was staring into some alternate version of myself. At first, I thought maybe the app had glitched. Maybe it pulled an old video from my camera roll and somehow uploaded it without me knowing. But the longer I stared, the more details leaped out at me, and each one sent a fresh shiver racing down my spine. Her eyes, wide dark brown, with that same sharp outer corner. Her mouth, curved the same way mine did when I tried to hold back laughter, revealing a little dimple that only appeared when the smile was truly genuine. Even her laugh, though only a snippet in the video, rang with the same tone, as if I were listening to an echo of my own voice. And then there was the birthmark. A tiny, faint crescent-shaped mark, tucked just under her chin on the left side, so subtle that most people had never even noticed mine. I used to trace it with my finger as a child, wondering if it meant something, if it was a mark I shared with someone out there in the world. And now, staring at the stranger on my phone, I knew that mark wasn't mine alone. My heart started pounding, hard enough that I could feel it in my throat. I sat up, staring at her username, clicking through her profile like someone hypnotized. I watched video after video, and with each new one the feeling of familiarity deepened. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she spoke. The way she raised one eyebrow slightly higher than the other when she was being sarcastic. These weren't just coincidences. These were habits I thought were mine alone. And yet, there she was. I lost track of time that night. Hours passed, the sky outside my window turned from black to gray, and still I sat there, staring at her face, caught between disbelief and a deep, aching sense of curiosity. I felt like the ground beneath me had shifted, like the reality I'd known all my life wasn't as solid as I had once believed. I kept asking myself the same question on repeat. Who is she? And why does she look exactly like me? Asterisk, asterisk. It was the kind of question that doesn't let you rest. One that doesn't have an easy answer. I didn't know it then, but that night was the first step down a path that would change everything I thought I knew about myself. And it all began with one swipe. The next few days after I found her were a strange blur. I went through the motions of daily life, work, errands, phone calls, but my mind wasn't really there. Every free moment, and even the stolen ones in between, I found myself back on her TikTok page, watching, rewatching, studying her face like I was looking for proof that I wasn't losing my mind. It's hard to describe the kind of pull I felt. I wasn't just curious. It was something deeper, something woven into the bones of who I was. Like some part of me had always known there was another piece missing, and now that I'd glimpsed it, I couldn't unsee it. At first, I told myself it was impossible. Plenty of people have lookalikes in the world, right? Distant cousins, doppelgangers, even random strangers who share a few features. But the more I watched her videos, the harder it became to deny the truth my gut was screaming at me. The same gestures, the same crooked smile, the same laugh, and that birthmark, that tiny, perfect mark. It wasn't just coincidence. But knowing something and admitting it to yourself are two very different things. I spent 2 nights in a row drafting a message to her. Each time I'd stare at the blinking cursor, typing out the words, only to delete them before I could hit send. Hey, I know this is going to sound crazy, but... Backspace. Delete. Hi, I came across your profile and I couldn't help but notice. Delete. Rewrite. The fear of looking ridiculous kept stopping me. What if I was wrong? What if she thought I was just another internet weirdo trying to get attention? But the longer I waited, the more the not knowing ate at me. It wasn't just about curiosity anymore, it was about identity. About answers I didn't even realize I'd been searching for my whole life. On the third night, after hours of pacing my apartment and talking myself out of it, I finally pressed send. The message was simple, careful, polite. Asterisk, hi. I know this is going to sound strange, but I came across your videos, and I couldn't help but notice we look exactly alike. I've never met anyone who shares so many similarities, even down to the little birthmark under your chin. I hope this isn't too weird, but I had to reach out. Asterisk. The second I hit send, my heart started racing like I'd done something irreversible. I stared at the screen, refreshing the chat over and over, watching for that little typing notification that never seemed to appear. Minutes passed, then hours. I went to bed that night with my phone on the pillow next to me, my heart refusing to settle. And when I woke up, there it was. A reply. Asterisk. I've been staring at your profile for days too. I thought the same thing. Who are you? Asterisk. That one sentence was all it took. My hands were shaking as I read it, tears prickling the back of my eyes. In that moment, the distance between us didn't feel digital anymore. It felt real, tangible, like a thread had snapped tight between two halves of the same whole. We started talking right away. Short messages at first, careful, like two strangers trying to step out of the fog. But it didn't take long before the questions came rushing out. Asterisk, where are you from? How old are you? Were you adopted? Asterisk. The more we talked, the more pieces started falling into place. We were the same age, both adopted, both raised in different cities on opposite sides of the country. It was like staring at a mirror that stretched across time and space. I couldn't explain the feeling. It wasn't fear or even shock anymore. It was more like recognition, as if my heart had always known there was someone out there, and now she finally had a face, a name. And for the first time in my life, the question asterisk, who am I? Asterisk wasn't as simple as I once thought. After those first messages, the days began to melt into something surreal. It was like stepping into an alternate version of my own life, one where I wasn't alone in the world, but had someone who had lived a life so parallel to mine, it felt impossible. Her name was Emma. The first video call was the moment everything became undeniably real. I still remember the way my hands trembled as I answered the call. The screen flickered, and then there she was, the same eyes, the same shape of nose, the same curve in the jawline that I'd stared at in the mirror my entire life. We both sat there, blinking, mouths slightly open like neither of us could quite believe it. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. I just watched her, the way she tilted her head slightly when she was thinking, the way she chewed the inside of her cheek when she got nervous. The tiny, invisible habits I thought were mine and mine alone. Until now, the conversation started slow, awkward at first, like two people trying to untangle a lifetime of questions in a single breath. But the more we talked, the more the walls began to crumble. Questions tumbled out like water breaking through a dam. Asterisk, do you hate olives too? Asterisk. Asterisk, yes. Always have. Asterisk. Asterisk, did you used to doodle sunflowers in the corners of your notebooks? Asterisk. Asterisk, every single time. Asterisk. Asterisk, were you the quiet kid at school but somehow always the one people told their secrets to? Asterisk. Asterisk, yes. Oh my God, yes. Asterisk. It was like opening a book I'd never known existed, only to find the pages were already written in my handwriting. The deeper we went, the more the coincidences piled up. We both played piano, self-taught, at almost the exact same age. We both had the same childhood fear of thunderstorms, and the same guilty pleasure of sneaking ice cream from the freezer in the middle of the night. Even the same weird sleep habit, curling one leg out from under the blanket, no matter how cold it was. But the part that hit me hardest wasn't the little quirks or habits. It was the shared gaps in our stories. We were both adopted, both told, in vague and careful words, that our birth parents couldn't take care of us. No names, no explanations, just the same foggy hole in our early lives that had always made us wonder why. And now, sitting across from Emma on that video call, I couldn't help but wonder even more. How had we been separated? Who made that choice? And why had nobody ever told us the truth? There was one moment in that first conversation I'll never forget. Emma reached off camera and held up a small, worn photo. It was a picture of her as a baby, wrapped in a hospital blanket. The kind of photo that most people's parents frame and display, but for adopted kids, it's often the only clue to your beginning. She held it up, and I felt my stomach flip, because I had the same photo. Not identical, but eerily close. The same hospital tag on a tiny wrist, the same patterned blanket, even the same sterile blue-tinted lighting in the background. When I showed mine to her, the silence that followed said more than either of us could. For the first time, it felt like we were standing at the edge of a story that neither of us had been allowed to read until now. And the deeper we looked, the more it felt like the answers were out there, waiting to be found. Our calls became daily, sometimes stretching into the early morning hours, until we were both too tired to keep our eyes open. We shared every little piece of ourselves, old childhood photos, journals, stories of foster families and birthday wishes that had gone unspoken. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was connection. It was healing. And somewhere, beneath all of it, the question neither of us wanted to say out loud yet. Asterisk, how did this happen? Who kept us apart? Asterisk. We knew that sooner or later, we'd have to dig deeper. And we both knew the truth wasn't going to stay hidden much longer. The more Emma and I spoke, the less the distance between us seemed real. Physically, we were still miles apart, but emotionally, it felt like I'd known her forever. Like a part of me had been missing all these years, and I finally understood why I'd always felt incomplete. But beneath all the laughter, the shared stories, and the endless hours of comparing our lives, there was a quiet ache. A question that never left the back of my mind. Why were we separated? And one evening, it finally became too heavy to ignore. It started like any other night. We were talking about our childhood homes, the layout, the smell of the kitchen, the odd decorations foster families would put up. Emma mentioned a memory that stopped me cold. I used to have a stuffed bear, she said softly. Asterisk, its ear was torn, and I used to sleep with it every night. I called it Milo. I don't know why. My foster mom said I came with it, like it was always mine. Asterisk, I felt my heart skip, because I had a bear too. Same torn ear. Same name. Same story. That was the moment the puzzle finally screamed for attention. This wasn't just coincidence anymore. This was something far deeper, something buried beneath years of silence and half-truths. The next few days were a blur of calls to agencies, adoption files, and long overdue conversations with the parents who raised me. I gathered the courage to ask them, not accuse, just ask. And the look that passed between them told me they'd always known this day might come. They sat me down, hands folded tightly, and for the first time in my life, they didn't dodge the questions. It turned out that Emma and I had been born into chaos. Our biological mother was young, overwhelmed, and not ready for twins. The social services report painted a picture of someone barely hanging on, someone who had tried, but ultimately couldn't provide for 2 babies. But the shocking part wasn't that we were given up. It was that we hadn't been adopted together. Somewhere, somehow, a decision had been made. 1 child here, 1 child there. 2 lives sent down completely different roads, never meant to cross. And for years, both of us had wandered through life, haunted by a feeling we couldn't explain, like there was someone else out there just beyond reach. I could barely breathe as I processed it. Emma's side of the story wasn't much different. Her adoptive parents had been told almost nothing. Just a vague mention of a sibling who couldn't be placed, and a hope that the past wouldn't catch up. It was a neatly sealed chapter that neither of us had consented to. But now the past was wide open. When Emma and I met in person for the first time, standing at the arrivals gate of an airport, it wasn't like one of those cinematic slow-motion moments you see in movies. It was better. It was quiet, almost painfully quiet. We just stood there, staring, trying to convince ourselves that this wasn't some elaborate dream. Then she stepped closer, and without a single word, we both burst into tears. The hug wasn't long or dramatic. It wasn't for the cameras. It was the kind of hug that stitches something broken back together. The kind you don't realize you've been craving until it finally happens. 4 hours, we sat at a small cafe near the terminal, piecing together everything. The hospital, the adoption agencies, the gaps in our stories. We were twins, separated from birth, raised on opposite sides of the state, and reunited by nothing more than a random TikTok algorithm. Of all the people in the world, she was my missing piece. But even as the excitement of reunion wrapped itself around us like a warm blanket, there was still one more piece of the puzzle left unsolved: our birth mother. Who was she? Did she know? Was she even still alive? And if she was, would she want to meet the daughter she gave away? Neither of us had the answer, but for the first time in our lives, we knew we'd be facing the truth together. The days after reuniting with Emma felt surreal, like I'd been given a second chance at a life I didn't know I was missing. We talked every single day, sometimes for hours, about everything and nothing. Old scars, the foster homes that shaped us, the random twists of fate that kept us apart. But under every conversation, there was one question neither of us could shake. Who was our mother? The little we knew about her was almost laughably vague. A first name scribbled on a medical file, a birth date, and the note: unable to provide for the children. That was it. That was all the identity we'd ever been allowed. I wanted to hate her, and yet, deep down, I needed to understand her. The next chapter of our journey wasn't easy. Emma and I started with what little we had: birth records, court documents, the names of old caseworkers who had probably retired decades ago. We sent out emails, placed phone calls, and wrote letters. Weeks passed, sometimes months. Most leads went cold. Some were dead ends before they even began. But neither of us gave up. One cold afternoon, when the sky hung low and gray, Emma called me. I still remember her voice, shaky, breathless, the kind of excitement laced with disbelief. "I found something," she whispered. One of the caseworkers, an old woman named Mrs. Hall, had finally replied to Emma's letter. She remembered the file. She remembered us. And in her reply, she left a name. Not just the one from our birth certificates, but the real one. Lauren Whitmore. A quick search pulled up dozens of results. But one name stood out immediately. Not because it was common, but because it wasn't. Lauren Whitmore wasn't just anyone. She was famous. An author. A public speaker. A woman whose face had graced the covers of magazines, who'd stood on stages with world leaders, and who, under all the success, had once made the hardest decision a person could make: to give away her children. When I stared at her photo, something strange happened. I didn't see the polished celebrity. I didn't see the best-selling books. I saw myself, my chin, my eyes, my mouth, and I felt like the air had been knocked from my lungs. The revelation was both a blessing and a curse. The woman who had written inspiring books about self-worth and overcoming hardship was the same woman who, 24 years ago, had placed 2 newborns into the foster system and walked away. I didn't know what to think. Part of me was angry. Another part of me was desperate for answers. The smallest part, the part one hated to admit even existed, just wanted to meet her. Emma was quieter about it, but I could tell she felt the same. So, together, we drafted a letter. One that wasn't angry or bitter. Just honest. We didn't want money. We didn't want apologies. Only the truth. It took her 2 weeks to reply. When the envelope arrived, I held it like it might explode. I stared at her handwriting, shaky and elegant, and as I read, tears slipped down my cheeks, staining the pages. She told us about the fear, the shame, the helplessness she felt back then. About the man who had abandoned her before we were born. About the world that felt too big, too cold, and too impossible for a young, broke, scared girl to raise 2 babies alone. She had spent her entire adult life wondering if we'd ever find her. And now that we had, she was both grateful and terrified. "I never stopped loving you," the letter ended. Asterisk, "I just thought you deserved a better life than I could ever give." Asterisk, I read it out loud to Emma over the phone. Neither of us spoke much after. There wasn't anything left to say. Only one decision to make. We had to meet her. The day I finally met Lauren Whitmore was the day I learned how much I had yet to heal. Emma and I had agreed to meet our biological mother together. We needed each other for support, for strength. There was no way we could do this alone. Lauren invited us to a quiet, private cabin in the mountains. The address she gave us was miles away from the public eye, a place where she could escape the chaos of her public life. As we drove up the winding road, I couldn't stop my hands from shaking, couldn't quiet the fluttering of my heart. What would she be like? Would she look like me? Act like me? Speak like me? When we arrived, she was standing on the porch, waiting. I could tell it was her, even from the distance. The same eyes, the same mouth, and yet so different. Her presence was gentle but commanding, a woman who had lived a life I could never imagine. Her face carried the weight of 1,000 decisions, 1,000 secrets, and yet there was something so human about her. She was no longer the untouchable figure I had seen in the media. She was a mother who had once been a scared girl, a mother who had left us to give us a chance at something better. Emma and I stepped out of the car at the same time, both of us frozen, both of us terrified. Lauren stepped forward, her gaze shifting between us. Her eyes softened, and then she spoke the words I would never forget. Asterisk, you look just like me. Asterisk. It felt like the world had tilted on its axis. For so many years, I'd wondered who I was, who I came from, and now it was clear. The pieces of the puzzle were finally falling into place. We didn't run into each other's arms. There was no dramatic, tearful embrace. Instead, it was quiet. It was tentative. It was slow. Over the next few hours, we sat together, talked, shared. Lauren listened to our stories, our frustrations, our pain. And in return, she shared hers. The long years of regret, the fear, the crushing weight of her decision to give us up, and the complex web of emotions she had never been able to untangle. Her life had been filled with success, but it had also been filled with loneliness. She had always kept her distance from people, afraid they'd judge her, afraid they'd see her as weak. She had built walls around her heart to protect herself from the world's gaze, and in doing so, she had shut herself out from the one thing she truly wanted, to be a mother. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't feel the need to ask why she had given us up. The answers were there, clear as day, in the tremor of her voice, in the way her hands shook as she reached out to us. Instead, we just sat there, together, as a family. Later that evening, as the sun set and the sky turned to hues of purple and pink, Lauren said something that caught me off guard. Asterisk, I know I can never make up for the past. I can never erase what happened. But if you'll let me, I want to be part of your lives now. I want to be the mother I should have been back then. I can't change the past, but I can offer the future. And if you'll have me, I want to give you both that. Asterisk. The words hung in the air, heavy and real. Emma and I exchanged a glance, and in that moment, I understood something fundamental. Love isn't always perfect. Family isn't always easy. But sometimes, it's worth fighting for. We didn't immediately say yes. Not because we didn't want to, but because we knew the road ahead would be difficult. There would be more questions, more moments of discomfort, and more of the healing that we needed to do, both for ourselves and for each other. But it was a start. As we said our goodbyes that night, I felt something I hadn't expected. A sense of peace. It wasn't a magical fix to everything, but it was a beginning. We could now write a new chapter. Not as perfect strangers, but as people learning to rebuild what had been lost. When Emma and I drove away, I looked out at the darkened road ahead. There were so many possibilities, so much life left to live. And now, with Lauren, the woman who gave us life, in both senses, we could begin again. And for the first time in years, I felt the weight of my past not as a burden, but as a part of me. The journey was far from over, but it was finally beginning to make sense.